Hey there everyone, my name's Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Welcome to update number 7 on the Galaxy class project. This is going to be a little bit of a different update where we're not showing so much work progress on the model itself, but we're taking a bit of a deeper dive into the electronics side that are going into the model. In fact, I have a special guest for this update, Danny, the programmer who is working on all the Arduino coding for the project. So you do not want to miss a moment of this update. We're going to show you some work in progress as well during the course of the interview. Keep in mind these are very rough works in progress that we're going to show you. They are not final results as we are still working on all the different effects that will be going into the Enterprise D that will also be available for many other projects, including the Enterprise E that Danny himself is going to be working on. So make sure that you stay tuned for the entire interview. It is going to be really interesting. So let's get right at it. But before we get started, why not take a moment and click the subscribe button? And while you're here, click on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. So here with me right now is Danny, who is the programmer who's going to be working on all of the effects for not just the Enterprise D project, but for Enterprise E, and I think pretty much whatever somebody might want to be able to do. Now, Danny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that there's a huge range of things that you can do with the Arduino board as long as it's programmed right.
Absolutely, yes. I think basically the sky is the limit. The hardware is the other limit. From the Arduino perspective, I think there's not much we cannot do. It comes more down, I think, to the other type of hardware, like the LEDs that we can use, the space we have to work with, all of these kinds of constraints that basically the kits and the electronics gives us. But otherwise, I think most of the things we see on screen, most of the things that we're familiar with from the Star Trek effects, we can basically build into our models. I cannot think of anything right now we wouldn't be able to do. So yeah.
Some of the hardware issues I think that we've been trying to work through. I know in my last update I was trying to work with those really small SMDs, the individual ones, and I was getting kind of frustrated because they just weren't working out.
Yes.
Definitely a learning curve.
Absolutely.
You had some success with those, right?
Yes. The issue with the small, so yeah, I got them to work. I mean, they work fine. All of the individual addressable LEDs that we can get, the small ones, I think the smallest ones I have are 2020s.
That's 2 millimeters across, 2 millimeters across.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
The 2 millimeter in both directions, and I've been able to get them pretty much working. I mean, they work fine. I get them lined up. The only issue when you want to really solder them closely together, when you do hand soldering and just use wires, the heat travels across the wire. So other points you've soldered might,
Come off.
Yes, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. I think that's a bit of an issue. They work very well. I think they're. I've ordered another set of them because I think they're very useful also in smaller models where we want, for example, if we work with things that might be even 1/2500 scale, or the smaller ships that are on 1/1000 scale, we can still use these kind of LEDs for photon torpedoes, individual light sources that you might want, like just think of a bird of prey exhaust, something like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's the learning curve is there for sure. But I think I'm starting to see, the use of it, because I think we can use them for a lot of small finicky things. So that's nice. The main idea was, of course, to build the phaser strip with them and build them ourselves. Well, I still think with a lot of patience that can be done. But I'm now seeing that there are other possibilities for us as well there. Mm-hmm. And we just have to see where we go with the phaser strip. But I still think the small LEDs are very interesting to use.
Yeah. So the Arduino is going to be able to cover every lighting effect inside the model?
Yes. One Arduino for one chip. Yes. And I think right now, as we are working on your D and my E, which pretty much shares I think the effect, except for I have the Bassard collector effect, which you don't have. Your phaser effect is a little bit more um, detailed, I think, than on the E. On the E, it's more just the two lights that come together. What on the D, you can pick whether you want to have the trailing effect, whether you don't want to have the trailing effect, and I want all of these options available, because I think also if at one point the owner thinks, oh, I don't like the trailing effect, just one button press, turn it off, or maybe make it a variable where you just dim it, or it goes from being very extreme to completely gone. We can do all of these things, and I think one like an Arduino Uno can very easily run all of the effects simultaneously. Might be I've been playing around with the warp effect quite a bit, where we of course get the flash and the full lights on white, which draws quite a bit of power, and I've seen there that the other LEDs kind of dim when you get these kind of effects, but that's again something we can compensate using capacitors and these kind of things. And even maybe if the Arduino doesn't give us enough power to run everything at full force, then we can still, that's the nice thing, we can supply, right? We can supply power so that at least that's not an issue. And but there's more than enough connectors on an Arduino Uno to connect basically all of the FX locations. And still have enough connectors to actually connect buttons and make everything adjustable for the end user, so you don't need to go into code or just as you would want, but just pressing buttons, you can adjust your effects and use them, of course.
Yes. So run down the effects for the Enterprise E that you're programming in. The Enterprise D effects are essentially the same, minus a few. So what effects are you putting all into the one Arduino for the Enterprise E?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I worked on was the Bassard collectors, because I thought they were quite interesting, because they vary quite a bit, and from what you see on screen. I went mostly with just the First Contact movie, because also from movie to movie they're a little bit different, because we go more into the CGI effects of course later, but just like you did on your E, I wanted to focus more on the physical model.
Yeah. And
of course there's still the effect is CGI, but it's very specific, and there's a very nice close-up shot in the movie where the escape pods leave the Enterprise E, where you see the Bassards really up close, and then you see it's very more detailed than when you see it at a far angle. It goes through a range of colors, more through a pinkish to even orange to yellow to red. Red, of course, being the most dominant color in there. And I tried to capture this exactly, and I think I've been able to completely replicate the color shifts that you see there. Of course, the kind of lava-ish thing, it's hard to put gel or something in the Bassards. But other than that, I think it looks very nice.
I'm sure somebody might try.
We might try, why not? Someday.
Like a self-contained little packet that has some gel in it up against you got my mind working, but...
Yeah, put a little motor in behind so you get some propellers in there that kind of moves it around. Why not?
That's a different model.
yes. Yeah, there's so many things you can try out. Of course, the warp effect has been the next thing I was working on, and that was quite straightforward. It's more about finding, because we're using the addressable LEDs, we have to we have a very wide range of colors, and of course we want to capture the right color of blue, and then there are small variations. So when the ship is actually just at impulse, or like not at warp drive, or when it is at warp drive, the blue varies a bit, and then also the white. Well, when it flashes, when it jumps into warp, like, do we still want a little blue in there? How long is it? How long is the effect on screen, right? Just referring to all of this era, like the TNG, the next generation era kind of ships, and kind of looking what they're doing there, and coming to something that's where you think like, yeah, this is how it should be. And it's all about timing. It's about, what do you want? Also, of course, syncing it to sound effects, because of course we'll be using that as well. So there's a lot of things there that were a little bit of work. Of course, we have the strobe lighting, right? All of the strobing around around the ship.
The strobe lights don't have to be addressable LEDs though, right?
Absolutely not. No, I don't use addressable LEDs. I use 0402s like you did in your build, and but you can also address the intensity by the PWD outs of the Arduinos, where you can just address them like how bright you want them to be, or just completely on, completely off, like we want with the flasher circuit, of course. And the E actually, if you look at it on screen, it has two timings in the flashers. So there's a timing for all of the strobes all around the ship, but then the whole flashers are on a different time scale than the other ones. And that's already also something I've taken care of. It's inside, it's been programmed, it's running, it's tested, all works. And then of course we have...
And that attention to detail is something that I really appreciate. Some of the other boards that you might be able to work with don't necessarily line up with what you see on screen. The board that I put into the Enterprise E I just didn't take into account that on each side of the saucer there's a flashing white, but there's also the constant on red for port or green for starboard, and a lot of people tend to miss the two lights there. It's really hard getting them into that saucer, but those are some of those details that kind of just make it a little bit more realistic to the movies, and I really like that.
Yeah, screen accuracy, right? And I mean, in terms of, I think even like the timing of the flashing lights on the saucer, they're on a different time scale than the flashers that are on the rest of the hull. So on the secondary hull, on the warp nacelles, they have a different time interval between the flashes than the ones that are on the saucer. I think, I mean, these small little details, I think it's just interesting, and it's a challenge, and it's fun to work with. Getting everything to work on one Arduino, of course, the timing aspect of everything, right? Because we're just working in one time loop, and then to work with that, that's the nicest challenge for me as a programmer to work with these things, because you have so many things happening simultaneously, and you want every effect to be available, on the button press, and that you don't want the other effects or the other timings to get off of their time scale, or that there are no delays in there. And I mean, for a normal programmer, these are quite normal things. But for me, when I usually program, it's simulated, so I don't work with hardware. And now it's actually nice to work with these things, and you immediately see the effect, of what your code is doing, and you see it on in the real world on a physical model, which is just, which is something else, and quite fun. I think, and we of course have other effects that we still have. Of course, the photon torpedoes, which we can have right now. The way I've programmed it, as many as you want on the ship launchers, they just line up with the data cable, so you just serially connect them, and you can, for each photon torpedo, for each torpedo launcher, I should say, you can address whether they're quantum torpedoes, photon torpedoes, or even plasma torpedoes. If you go more into the Romulans and even the Klingons, right? They use often plasma torpedoes where they're green. So and then even the timings are accurate to the ones they've had on screen. So
Well, I always thought it would be cool to have a Borg invasion mode where all of that stuff turns green, right?
Yes, and that's why you've been fine, of course, with your interior lighting as well, to have them smart.
Yeah.
So we can do all this, or just something cool as where you want to display going to red alert, right? Of course, and we know internally in the ships, all of the displays go on red alert. Why not have some little bit of red flashing through your windows, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, these kind of things, and
of course the phasers.
Of course, the phasers. Yeah, that was, I think, it still is the biggest challenge, because they're so. I think there's so many variations, and also, like you've seen also on the reactions on the videos you've posted, people have so many opinions on like how they should look like. No, they should not start at the end. They start closer to the source. No, they don't have trailing. Yeah, they should have more trailing. Oh, I really love the trailing effect. It's these kind of things, and I think it's nice to have all of the options in there, which we can have. And then also how bright is actually the lights coming together compared to actually the firing source. Do we want that the same brightness? Do we want to have a little bit dimmer so the firing effect is when it's constant, when really the phase is shooting out of the ship, right? Whether that's brighter than the ring effect. So there's so many things, so many variables we can play with, and that's the fun part, I think.
Well, one of the nice things about going the route of the addressable LEDs in the Arduino for the phaser effect, there are a few other phaser effects out there, and I purchased one for the project before I got onto looking at the Arduino system, and the daunting task of trying to see if I could figure out how to put together a sketch or cobble together a sketch of some sort just to do the phaser array before we started talking. And one of the nice things is that you can do the entire arc with as many LEDs as fits along that strip, where many of the others are it's a defined number of LEDs. The board I was going to be using was 25 LEDs, and so you've got to make sacrifices. Either it's not going to be smooth because there's lots of space in between your LEDs, or as a lot of people do, you only start the effect part way, which really doesn't look like what I see in the next generation. And so being able to use the full LED strip, I think I did something like 125 LEDs on the D when I was testing it out, and it just looked smooth like butter. It was pretty good, pretty cool.
Yeah, of course, the advantage you have on your D, which is a 1/1000 scale, is that the arc is pretty large, right? So, with I think you're using 50/50 LEDs, so 5x5. Yes. So there you can already get a really high resolution in terms of how many LEDs we have per distance unit, so per meter or whatever. And this time, so let's say how many neopixels, how many LEDs we have in the arc. But I've noticed already when you go to even a model that's a little bit smaller, which is the E, there already you can have like spot sourcing, or the jump between the LEDs is just because the spacing between the LEDs is too large. The jump is too large, right? So I'm looking into right now also what is the best solution for these kind of situations. I tend to go with 2020s, and also I'm waiting for a shipment of new LED strips which have 300 2020s per meter. So that's ultra high density, I would say. Yes. So then I think I can get quite a lot of LEDs inside that E phaser strip, and then I think that will be really worth it. And of course, making this available as an end product. I mean, the cool thing is we have this LED strip. It's just 3 connections and you're done, right? I mean, that's the nice part of it. There's not all of these individual LEDs you need to connect, and it's all done for you.
Well, somebody like me who never wants to put a board inside the ship if I can avoid it, I was looking at having to make compromises with the other board I was looking to use. You would have to have well over 25, 26, 27, 28, I'm not sure how many exactly, wires to run the phaser effect, and you're not going to run all of those down the pipe into the base along with everything else. So I was like, okay, I have to put this in the board. I don't like this option. There must be a better option. And imagine using 2 of those to do top and bottom. So then you're looking at north of 50 wires just to be able to do that. This is a much more elegant solution.
Absolutely. For two full phaser arcs, you will need 4 cables. 2 data cables, 1 power, 1 ground.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's incredible. So let's look towards the future. We're sorting all this stuff out. We're getting it, working with the actual models, and there's adjustments and different things to make. Once that's all done, if somebody says, hey, Danny, I really want to do an Enterprise E, and I want it to be the Nemesis version, can you help me? Can you make the adjustments so that it looks right for the Nemesis version, even though you've done it for the First Contact version?
Absolutely. I think I'm planning to do both versions. Actually, I have 2 kits waiting for me to build. Of course, I want to test everything out first. from what I've seen, because I'm planning to do this already, is that it's very easily addressable. The difference between the ships isn't that big. There's more phaser arcs. There are more photon torpedoes. Other than that, lighting placement is a bit different on both models. But I'm working on guides for that as well.
Okay.
So in the end, if somebody decides, that they want my help or they want to go with something that I build, I will have an instruction sheet for them, an instruction manual that will tell them exactly where goes what according to screen accuracy. And then, of course, if the user wants something else, it's all up to them, right? But even if somebody comes and say, hey, I want to do, there's so many people building refits, right? So it's not an issue. It's actually for me as a programmer, the programming I usually do in 2 nights. So that's for unless the effect is a bit more complicated, like for example when I was doing the Bassard collectors for the E, and that was also my first effect, so I needed to try things out a little, but everything's doable and everything's I think as far as the imagination goes, we can get it in there. So
somebody says,
sure.
I'm doing Voyager now. Can you help me out with the effects for Voyager?
I'd love to. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Deep Space Nine, got that on my shelf waiting. So whatever we want. Yeah, I think it's a challenge for me. I like it, and sure, if anybody's interested, they can contact me, and we can work things out.
So this is something that you might make available for people once it's all sorted out.
Yes, I'm already thinking about it, because I've already seen the reactions also to the videos you post, and also when I post things on my Facebook, how many people respond to this. And I think although there are great products out there available already, it's always good to have alternatives, and I think it's always good to have options. It's just a lot of people pushing the hobby forward, right? So and I think I have something I can add. I think it is something that people would like. So I hope it will be something that people will like. From what I've seen from the reactions, people do. And I'm already I've already been in contact with Arduino itself to look into the legal side of it, because of course that's also an issue. But the way it looks like right now, from what I'm using, it would not be an issue at all to make this commercially available at some point. So but of course there's still some development time, right? We want to test things out, we want to see how well it works, also how it holds up with a little bit of time, of course, right? We want to build this into it. But yeah, in the end, we can look into these options for sure.
Well, that's very cool. I think that this is really the step forward for lighting inside models, and the potential and opportunities to be able to do things not just stock out of the box the way somebody has decided it should be for you, but to really be able to make it your own thing, to make it as accurate as you want or as simple as you want, and to be able to control it all off one board. I think that's really something that people are going to be super interested in.
Yeah, I think you've named all of the key words. I think accurate, high quality, but also easy to install lighting. I think that's something that could really be beneficial for a lot of people who don't want to mess with these things themselves.
And sound too, right?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, that comes with the lighting, of course. That's part of it. Yes.
Yeah. What kind of options do you think we might be able to have for controlling the ship once the model is all done on its base, on its stand? What kind of options might be available for people?
So for every ship we'll be working on, I'll work on a startup sequence, of course, because I think it's just a nice thing. You turn it on, you have a nice introduction, nice startup sequence with lights coming on, the effects kicking in. But then all of the effects, I think, will be addressable. Of course, phases, photon torpedoes, quantum torpedoes, these kind of things.
Well, you wouldn't want those firing all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. No, those will be controllable by button presses, or they will be somehow built into a sequence you can call up. I'm still looking at what would be the coolest. I think we'll just do both, and of course, interior lighting, right? How bright do you want it to be? Some people like the supernova look, inside their ship being really extremely bright. Some people want it a bit more toned down. Of course, this should be addressable. In general, the brightness of all the effects should be addressable, I think. So that will be for sure be in there. Going to warp will be something, that should be addressable by a button press. So I want to have all of these things basically available for adjustment. And how loud do you want your sounds to be, right? Do you want them to be extremely loud? Do you want them to be, at a lower level? So I think all of these things should be addressable, and I think we can all of it do it on just one Arduino. Uno we're talking about, right? Of course. For the if you go into bigger ships with more options, something we might move to a Mega, so an Arduino Mega, which has more connector ports. They're also a bit faster, so that might be beneficial. So when you run multiple effects at the same time, because of course these things have their computational limits. I still have to find them. I haven't run into them yet, but theoretically they have them. And for smaller ships we can move even to nanos or something, even smaller. Maybe move away from Arduino at one point, look at some other options. I'm looking into maybe at one point build my own version of a microcontroller. So I'm not sure yet in what direction it will go. But all of it should be addressable, controllable, and for the end user to determine how it should look like. And,
Well, I think that it's super interesting. I think it's the way forward. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And thank you so much for taking the time to help me with the project that I'm working on. And I hope. And
thank you for helping me out with the other stuff that I have no clue about. So the electronics and the programming, I'm good with that. But all of the other stuff of model building, you've helped me out quite a lot, and thank you for that as well. So looking forward.
That's what the community of model building should be all about. Is a hive mind being able to coordinate and cooperate together and really push the boundaries of what's possible by teaming up and putting everybody's different skills to good use. So the more
join the hive mind.
Yeah, the more we work together in this kind of community, I think the more interesting things we'll be able to do moving forward. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, that's pretty much going to wrap it up on this update for the Galaxy class project. Not a whole lot to show on the model itself, but the programming and figuring out the electronics is really what we are deep into at the moment, so there's not a lot to show. I'm also doing a lot of cleanup on the secondary hull right now, working on getting the little bits of resin that need to be trimmed off the edges that I missed the first go around, working on seeing how the deflector dish is going to fit in, because very soon we are going to be closing that up, and also we're going to be working on the warp engines very shortly. So I hope that you've enjoyed this very special update on the Galaxy class project. If you did, make sure that you hit that like button. If you're new to my channel or you haven't done so yet, why not hit that subscribe button today? You'll make me very happy if you do. We're on our way to 1,000 subscribers and we are over the 800 mark. That is super exciting. But for now, my name is Andrew and this is Canadian Starships. Have a great day, everyone.